Chapter 1. Captured below. The sewers of Grunstadt stank of rot and ancient waste, a miasma of centuries clinging to stone and brick like a shroud. The air was damp, thick with mildew, and echoed with the soft trickle of fetid water slithering through narrow channels. Skritch-Needleclaw moved with practiced ease through the darkened maze. His hunched form darted between crumbling arches, claws silent on the slick stone. He was cloaked in rags and filth, his patchy fur matted with grime. In his three-fingered paw he clutched a scroll sealed with wax, the marks of the Council of 13 etched into the crimson stamp. His black eyes darted left, right, left again. The scent of man-things was faint but present, drifting in the current like a predator's breath. Still, he had a task. The message was destined for the clan node below the Middenheim tunnel forks. Fail, and the warlock engineers would skewer him with barbed wire and feed his carcass to the rat ogres. Another corner, another tunnel. Then he heard it. Click. A bolt of lightning surged through his body. The trap had been wired into the stone, an Empire-made arcane glyph, waiting for his scent, his very presence. Skritch shrieked as the pain ignited his nerves, muscles locked, bones spasmed. He dropped the scroll, his claws scrabbling futilely against the ground. A thud echoed behind him, then another. Boots. Figures emerged from the darkness. Torchlight flared, revealing glinting plate armor and flowing black cloaks. Their visors were graven with silver sigils of Sigmar's hammer, and each carried weapons soaked in warding runes, crossbows and hooked blades designed for more than mere killing. "Alive, remember?" the lead witch hunter barked. His voice was harsh, grating like a rasp across steel. "Interrogator wants the thing breathing." Skritch hissed, saliva bubbling between broken fangs, and lunged, desperation and fury guiding his limbs. A cudgel caught his jaw with a sickening crunch. His head snapped sideways, teeth shattering, blood spurting down his neck in thick ropes. He staggered but didn't fall. Another blow struck his ribs, bones cracked. He dropped to all fours, chest heaving. Still he moved. Still he tried. A chain snapped out, barbed and jagged, like a whip from hell, and wrapped around his throat. It jerked tight, tearing fur and skin as it pulled him backward, choking off his scream. Blood and bile sprayed from his mouth as he writhed. "Stubborn vermin," spat another hunter, ramming the hilt of a dagger into the Skaven's gut. The blade didn't pierce, but the force drove the wind from Skritch's lungs. He collapsed at last, twitching, trembling. "Check the body," said the leader. The hunter stooped and retrieved the scroll. He examined the seal, then placed it into a wax-lined pouch. "Council cipher," he confirmed. The leader grunted. "Interrogator Malthea will want to see that. Secure the rat." The iron manacles clamped over Skritch's wrists and ankles. He barely felt them, his consciousness fading, blackness crawling inward. But even in pain, his mind skittered like a rat through the dark. He wasn't dead. Not yet. And not dead meant not defeated. As they dragged his broken body through the slime and muck back toward the surface and the cruel light of the Empire's dungeons, Skritch's thoughts churned with venomous resolve. They thought they had him, thought him weak, captured, finished. But Skritch-Needleclaw had a plan. A deep, deep, dark, smart plan, and soon the man-things would learn the Skaven do not die easy. Not when vengeance festers in the blood. Chapter 2. The Iron Shackles of Man-Things. The dungeon stank of old blood, rust, and urine, the iron and bile scent of suffering that never faded, no matter how many buckets were hurled or prayers whispered. Beneath the garrison of Grunstadt, Hidden behind false stone and guarded by fanatics who worshipped Sigmar with flame and branding iron, lay the Empire's black site. Zell 47. Skritch-Needleclaw dangled in darkness, suspended by iron manacles that bit into his wrists like the fangs of a steel wolf. His arms had long since gone numb, his shoulders shrieking with fire every time he shifted to relieve the pressure. His feet brushed the floor only when he strained to stand. A cruel game the man-things had designed. Just enough contact to keep hope alive, just enough agony to keep it unbearable. His fur was matted with his own blood and waste. His right eye had swollen shut. Where once his twitching whiskers flared with cunning alertness, now they drooped, sticky with dried mucus and filth. Yet his remaining eye, black as obsidian, still glinted with malice. The torchlight flared as the heavy oaken door creaked open. 2 figures entered. The first was Captain Ewald Kranz, a tall, gaunt man clad in blackened steel mail beneath a crimson cloak. His face was all sharp edges, high cheekbones, narrow chin, and a hawk-like nose that had likely broken more than once. He carried no whip, no blade. He didn't need them. His presence alone was cold, surgical, like a scalpel hovering over an open wound. The second was worse. Sister Malthea of the Order of the Silver Flame stepped in behind him. Her robes were pure white, untouched by the filth of the dungeon, adorned only with the golden sunburst of Sigmar across her chest. But beneath the piety gleamed madness. Her eyes wide, glassy, far too bright, never blinked when they met Skritch's. Her lips twitched with the remnants of old hymns, half sung and half muttered, as if to drown out his breathing. "Vermin," she said softly, almost sweetly. "Today you will talk." Skritch hissed, but the sound was weak, barely more than a wet rasp from his shredded throat. Krantz motioned. The guards pulled a lever, and the chain above groaned. Skritch's feet lifted from the stone completely, his body jerking as the full weight of him tore into his joints. He shrieked, a raw, animal scream that echoed down the corridor. Malthea stepped forward, removing a small iron box from her satchel. She opened it reverently. Inside were tiny instruments, needles, hooks, serrated blades no longer than a finger. Each was spotless, polished, cherished. "Palace of the tunnels beneath the Nordlander gate," she said, selecting a spiral drill the size of a nail. "Where do they lead? How many of you crawl there?" Skritch spat, or tried to. The gob of blood dribbled down his chin. She drove the drill into his thigh, slowly, lovingly. The spiral edge bit through fur, flesh, and into the meat of his leg. Skritch convulsed, howling so loud it cracked his own voice. She twisted it, humming a Sigmarite hymn. "Where do they lead?" Kill me," he gurgled. Kranz raised a brow. Eventually, she withdrew the drill and reached for a knife. "Tongue next. If you won't speak truth, you'll speak no more lies." Skritch panicked. His mind raced, desperation like fire in his skull. He began to babble, not truth, not yet, but fragments. Nonsense, half-words and queekish, garbled maps of sewer paths, real and imagined. She paused. "That's better. Isn't that better?" She stroked his snout with a bloodied finger. Krantz stepped forward and placed a thick sheaf of parchment on the table. "Everything he says, record it, every word. We will verify each path he describes. We will burn their nests out, one by one." Then he turned to Skritch. "I know what you are, rat. Not just a messenger, not just some plague-sodden scout. You're a spy, an agent, trained." Skritch met his gaze, teeth bared in a bloody grin. "Good," Kuruno said. "Because I enjoy unraveling clever ones." They left him hanging there, his leg drilled open, mouth swollen, blood trailing in dark pools beneath his clawed toes. The torchlight faded as the door closed, and Skritch smiled through the pain, a slow, writhing smile. They were clever, yes, but not clever enough. He was watching, always watching. He knew the lock cycles, the meal times, the different torchbearers. Every scream from every prisoner, every chant Sister Malthea whispered, every step of Kranz's boots. Let them bleed him. Let them cut, twist, break. He would give them what they wanted, and when the time came, he would take everything from them. Chapter 3. Needleclaw's Promise. The stench of burning hair and cauterized flesh lingered long after Sister Malthea's tools were wiped clean and stored. Iron clanked in rhythmic intervals, echoing like a drumbeat through the oubliette of pain. And in the center of it all, swaying ever so slightly, hung Skritch-Needleclaw. Broken in body, but not in will. His left arm had been twisted out of socket during his last session. His right ear was a tattered mess, nearly sliced from his head during an attempt to peel back the lies. His legs were nothing more than swollen stumps of bruised and punctured flesh. One eye remained functional, bloodshot and weeping pus. But it saw, oh, it saw. Skritch hung limp most days, head down, drooling, murmuring half-mad squeals in broken Reichspiel and worse. Many much tales, twists, run, hikes. No tunnels, yes. No tales. All gone, chewed by ghouls. The guards would laugh, poke him with their spears, call him piss beast or worm rat. One even pissed on him once. That one he remembered very well. Name was Holger. Patchy beard, smelled of boiled turnips. But while his body swayed in weakness, his mind skittered through the cracks in the stone. Watch, learn. Hide, remember. Yes. The patrols changed every 6 hours. He'd noted it by the change in torch brightness. One shift always took longer at the southern door. The one with the dented helm always carried an iron keyring, second most worn of the bunch. And Sister Malthea, her devotions happened precisely at the 6th bell. She would spend an hour in solitary prayer, leaving her flensing knives behind in the sanctum. Skritch didn't think linearly, like man-things. His thoughts were nests, tangled, overlapping, swarming. While they fed him mold-crusted bread and stagnant water, he stored every detail. The jangle of chains, the reek of blood on different guards, even the peculiar squeak of the floor panel just outside his cell. His mind was a gnawing, chittering hive of strategies. He began to play the part more deeply. When they approached, he'd flinch from shadows, mumble gibberish, twitch violently at the sound of footsteps. He chewed on his own fur, bit at invisible insects. He smeared filth on his chest and traced spirals, whispering of the horned rat's glory in cracked tones no sane man would understand. One night, Sister Malthea arrived with a young acolyte. Fresh-faced, stiff with piety, the boy hesitated at the cell door. "This one is lost," Malthea said, not unkindly. "Madness has consumed him. Look at how he trembles. See the eyes? Empty." Skritch twitched, then let out a piercing, high-pitched shriek. "Cheese, cheese, cheese for the shadows! The teeth! They're in the walls!" The boy stepped back. "Madness is no excuse for heresy," Malthea muttered. "Even filth has meaning and suffering. He will serve." They left. But they had said enough. Skritch pressed his tongue to the roof of his mouth. Inside a molar, nestled in a hollow of bone, was a sliver of rusted copper wire. Small enough to avoid detection, sharp enough to work a lock if he could get to one. Every movement was pain. Every breath carried the flavor of rust and bile, but every second brought him closer. One night, when the guards passed, he moaned louder than usual. "Cold, cold, Mother. No teeth today, please. I was good." They laughed and kept walking, but the one with the dented helm dropped something. A shard of hardtack. Bread crust, useless to anyone, but it landed near the bars. Skritch waited until silence ruled the hall. Then, with muscles screaming in revolt, he twisted. Inch by inch he swung his legs, using the motion to sway his entire form forward. Back and forth. Back and forth. He grabbed it on the fifth swing, wedging it beneath a toe claw. He had tools now. 2. Enough to sharpen one on the wall and make the other a wedge. And slowly, the plan hatched, nested, bred. One night, when the screams of another prisoner echoed, human this time, Skritch whispered aloud to the dark, "Cut me, burn me, rip me, you lose." He spat a thick gob of blood and phlegm on the floor. Skritch-Needleclaw does not die in chains. His voice dropped, guttural and venomous. Man-things will bleed for this. And somewhere deep within the underdark of his soul, the horned rat listened. Chapter 4. A Whispered Pact. The cell walls bled secrets. Thick stones, blackened with mold and the grease of old agony, absorbed more than blood and piss. They drank whispers, moans, curses. Skritch-Needleclaw knew this. He'd learned the dungeon's language in silence. The shift of iron, the whimper of broken men, the tremor of chains too lightly touched by time. He listened through every waking moment, and he never slept. He heard the voice first on the 13th day of his captivity. It was not a scream or a plea, but a murmur, soft, hoarse, tinged with spite rather than despair. They used the wrong ratios, of course, it exploded. Idiots. Idiots, all of them. It came through the crumbled mortar of the wall behind him, where a crack as fine as a hairline ran from ceiling to floor. Not wide enough to see through, but enough for a breath. A whisper. A scent. Human. Old blood, sulfur, and vinegar. A scholar's scent. Skritch stilled his breathing, flattened his chest, and coiled his body close to the stone. He waited. That night, he spoke. "You think say too loud," he rasped. Boomir's listening." The silence afterward was a thing of weight, pregnant, suspicious, tinged with confusion. What the hell are you?" the voice eventually replied. Low, wary. "Friend, not friend," Skritch crooned. "Enemy of their chains, yes. A snort from the other side. "You're the rat, aren't you?" "Rat thing, yes." Skritch-Needleclaw. "Spy slink. And you?" "Ulrich Meinhardt, alchemist of the Third Tower, formerly. Until the bastards claimed I sold secrets to Marienburg." Skritch clicked his teeth. "Did you?" "I did worse," came the answer. "I told the truth." A rasping laugh, a rare, bitter thing, bubbled from Skritch's throat. "Truth is poison, like warp stone, yes. A pause, then, quietly. "You've been watching them." Skritch felt the air shift. The human was more perceptive than most. "Yes, watch, learn, memorize. You too?" "Of course. If I didn't, they'd have bled my brains out by now. I've been mapping patrols in my head, counting the bells by their rituals. They beat the prisoner in cell 6 every third night at second bell. The sister chants aloud every morning. Same hymn. 8 verses. 8 verses. Same as the lines of old Imperial alchemical transmutation. Clever." "I see. I hear," Skritch muttered. "You plan. I survive, you?" "The scat. You're mad." "Maybe. But I see cracks." Ulrich was quiet for a long while. "Then you'd never make it alone. You can barely walk." Skritch smiled in the dark. "True, true, but I do not need to run alone. I need clever hands, mix boon burn hands. X hands." Another pause. "And you're offering what in return?" "Sis," Skritch whispered. "I know the bones of this place. I feel it breathe. I know where they keep the dead buckets, where floor loose creaks, where God has soft eye for wine flask. You give fire, I give exit. You'll slit my throat the moment we're free. Maybe. You'll poison me first." Alric laughed. It was dry, humorless, but real. "We're both liars, vermin." "Yes?" Another silence. But this one was warmer. "We have days," Skritch murmured. "Not weeks. Soon they cut me open again. They will dig deeper next time. They think I hide tunnels in my stomach. They'll come for me, too. Interrogator's been sharpening his shears." Skritch hissed. "We make pact, whisper pact." "A whispered pact," Alric echoed. "A lie of allies," Skritch added. "Agreed." From behind the wall, the faint rattle of chains could be heard. Alric was moving, scratching something, digging at stone or loosening mortar. "I have something," he said after a minute. "A shard, mercury glass edge. They missed it when they searched me." Skritch's ears perked. "Tomorrow," Alric whispered, "during food drop. There's a gap. Guard's lazy. He leans left. We test the cell bars." "Yes," Skritch purred. "Rat and man-thing, dig-chew claw, together." And as the torchlight from the corridor dimmed again, plunging the dungeon into its familiar stinking gloom, Skritch leaned his head back against the wall. His lips curled in a wicked, blood-stained grin. He had a knife, a tool, a mind, and now a human. The pieces were in place. The gnawing would begin. Chapter 5. Secrets in the Wall. The stone whispered. Not in words, no. Skritch-Needleclaw knew better than that, but the cold walls of his cell spoke in groans and tremors, in the way the mortar wept moisture when the ground above shifted. They spoke in the way heat rose during the witches' hymns, and the cold returned with the changing of guards. He listened as only a Skaven could, with the senses of a predator that had crawled through 1,000 miles of refuse and blood, seeking every crack in every wall built to contain him. There were weaknesses, oh yes, yes, all things of man wrought in time. Skritch began with his claws. The bindings had worn his wrists raw, but the rot and pus that crusted the wounds dulled the pain. Useful, that. With slow, almost reverent precision, he scraped at the mortar around one particular stone near the floor, just beside the drain grating. The others ignored it. Why would a half-mad rat chew at the floor when he couldn't even stand straight? They didn't know that Skritch was chewing through night after night, minute by minute. He clawed and scraped, timing his efforts with the distant moans of prisoners or the clang of distant chains. The mortar flaked, crumbled. Once it tasted his blood, it softened. On the fourth night it came loose. Just a single brick, small and pitted, but behind it, a cavity no human architect had intended. A rat tunnel, narrow, winding, forgotten. Not part of any Imperial map or blueprint, a passage dug generations ago by Skaven scouts during the time of 3 moons. Long collapsed on one end, but not the other. He laughed, a low, chittering cackle that shook mucus from his nose. The rats came on the 5th night. Not many, just 2, skinny things with patchy fur and scabbed eyes. But they knew him. They remembered him. In their twitching, feral minds was some flicker of kin recognition. Skritch greeted them with soft tongue clicks and a gift a strip of bloody scab peeled from his own thigh. It was enough. He fed them with his filth, kept them close, made them his. In time, he gave them tasks. The cell above his, directly beneath a drainage pipe, had a crack in the iron grating. One of the rats slithered up through it, gnawed at the support hinge every night. Small flakes of rust rained down, unnoticed. Another burrowed into the refuse pit just off the latrine trench. There it found a coil of corroded wire, once part of a bucket system, now forgotten. Skritch retrieved it through the wall hole, cutting his palm to grasp it. The wire became his tool. He sharpened it on the stone, over and over, a whispering rasp that sang louder only when a nearby prisoner screamed under Sister Malthea's knife. He fashioned it into a hook, primitive, crude, but sharp. And with it he began to pry more bricks. Not many, just 3 more. But behind them lay a crawl space, tight enough for a Skaven, impossible for a man. The problem was the bars, still unyielding, still a cage. He turned to Ulrich. That night, he whispered through the cracked mortar, "Bars still hold. But I have path." "Where?" came the voice, hoarse from days without food. "Find me. Forgotten tunnel, my kin's work long ago." "Where does it go?" Down, beneath the refuse. Into old roots, sewer bones." Ulrich exhaled slowly. "Then we make it to the latrines." "Yes, you need my fire. And your hands. Bars must melt, twist. You bring boom. I have the mixture. My own bile mostly, and some shavings from the bowl hinge. Silver oxide. The rest is prepared in my gut. I swallow a plug every day to keep the mixture inert." Skritch blinked. "Clever man thing. I was a master," Ulrich said coldly, "until they strapped me to a table and shoved spiders into my ears." Skritch tapped a claw against the stone. "Soon. Tomorrow. 3rd bell. Guard snores near the end of hall. That's our breath. Then we melt steel. I'll need heat. Real heat. Then I burn." "I burn. My fur. I light it." Ulrich was quiet. "You're mad." Yes. The next morning, Skritch ripped a strip of his own fur from his thigh and smeared it with grease from the food bucket. His breath wheezed but did not fail. The next night, at the 3rd bell, Ulrich's mixture hissed through the wall like a boiling soul. The wire hook, now wound with rat hair and flame, ignited it. The fumes curled around the iron bars. They glowed faintly red. Bubbled, then cracked. Skritch hissed softly, triumphant. He pressed his snout against the widening cavity in the wall, staring down into the foul black of the rat tunnel. It was tight. It reeked of death. It would collapse in time. But it was enough. Enough to slip through. Enough to bite back. The dungeon trembled as a scream echoed down the corridor. Another soul broken. But Skritch-Needleclaw grinned in the dark, blood dripping from his claws, the brick dust caking his gums. The walls kept secrets, and he had torn them open. Chapter 6. Mask of Madness. The mask was easier to wear than Skritch had expected. All it took was letting the pain have its voice, letting the tremble become a quake, the drool become a stream. Madness, after all, was not a distant destination for a Skaven. It was a familiar den, warm and whispering, where the horned rat often waited with twitching teeth and laughter like knives. Skritch began the performance slowly. His body still bore the rotting marks of his imprisonment, scabbed over lash wounds, the gaping drill hole in his thigh oozing faintly, and burns across his flank where Sister Malthea had once branded sigils of purification. He used these pains, magnified them. At first it was twitching, then shuddering. He would curl into a fetal ball when the door creaked, scream at shadows, flinch from torchlight like a whelp. He chewed his own fur. He shrieked when they tried to feed him. One night he clawed at his own face until the blood smeared in a grotesque war paint of self-inflicted torment. It worked. The guards began to look at him with disgust, not caution. They muttered that he was broken, useless, harmless. One laughed aloud and tossed a bucket of his own piss into Skritch's cell for sport. Sister Malthea was not so easily convinced. She watched him. Always. Her blue eyes, pale and unblinking, studied him from beneath the gold-fringed hood of her sanctified robe. She had killed smarter things than him. Flayed sorcerers alive, drowned witches in holy oil. Madness, to her, was merely another shape of guilt. So he gave her more. He began speaking in two voices, one a child's lisp, the other a deep, choked growl that echoed from his ruined throat. He rocked back and forth for hours, hissing nonsense syllables, twitching violently whenever scripture was read. Then came the moment when the zealot believed herself victorious. It was the 9th bell, late into the witch's prayer hour, when Malthea entered alone. Her boots clacked against the blood-slick flagstones. In her hand, a slender brass censer swung, spilling incense laced with silver dust and crushed sage. Her other hand held a bone-handled knife, not for use, just habit. A promise. She stopped in front of Skritch's cell and peered in. The Skaven lay flat, twitching, mumbling, his eyes glazed and rolled. His tail quivered weakly, the tip twitching like a dying worm. "So hollow now," she said softly, kneeling to his level. Her voice was as sweet and sharp as a razor hidden in honey. The proud creature who spat curses and defiance. "See what remains. A husk." Skritch made a high-pitched, wheezing giggle. "Needleclaw. Skritch. Skritch is dead. No claws now. Only itch. She smiled, not kindly, a victor's smile. Her gloved fingers reached through the bars and gently tilted his head up by the chin. He didn't resist. "You should feel honored, beast," she whispered. "You were chosen by pain, shaped by it, and now you're empty enough to be filled." Her fingers trailed down to his chest, tracing the burn scars with mock affection. "Captain Kron says you're done. He wanted you incinerated with the next purge, but I asked to keep you. You're instructive." Her lips curled into something between reverence and delight. "Do you know why I serve Sigmar, filth? Because he whispers to me in flame. He told me about your kind, that you burrow, infest, corrupt. You are rot in flesh. But rot can be used. Mold feeds fire." Skritch's eye twitched. He let a trail of drool dribble onto her wrist. "I found the map you carried, hidden in your tail binding. Such clever script, scratched in soot and bone ash. You thought us blind." The mention of the map made his heart spike. But he didn't move. She leaned closer. "I burned it, of course," she said, almost dreamily. "But not before I copied it. Our inquisitors march tomorrow to the undertunnels. You see, even your madness has use. I told Kranz I broke you with purity. He believes me. Fools always believe sanctity wins." She stood then, brushing off her hands, the wet glisten of Skritch's drool slick on her glove. "Tomorrow the purge begins," she said, turning. "And I will watch the tunnels collapse. I will hear your kin scream beneath the weight of holy fire." The door creaked open. Skritch didn't twitch until it shut again. Then he smiled. His eye, still half-rolled, focused once more. The twitch in his tail vanished. His breath slowed. The purge was coming, but not as they expected. He knew now. They had copied the map. They thought it led to the main tunnels. But Skritch had given false paths, routes that led to collapsed warrens, nests long abandoned, or worse, traps meant for fools who walked like gods. And Malthea, oh, sweet, pretty flame hag. She'd told him when the gnawing would begin soon, and he would wear his madness no longer. He would wear vengeance. Chapter 7. The Black Powder Plot. The torchlight in the corridor flickered with the sour scent of pitch. Skritch-Needleclaw crouched in his corner, head bowed, face shrouded in tangled whiskers and filth. But his ears, torn and scabbed as they were, twitched at every echo. He'd heard the phrase twice now. Black powder drop. First in the whisper of two guards exchanging watch rotations near the refuse pit, then again, in passing from a junior engineer, his voice trembling with unspent fear. Neither had noticed the rat behind the wall listening, waiting, burning their words into memory. The third time confirmed it. Captain Krantz himself, speaking to a cloaked operative just outside the chapel antechamber. Teasing. Detonation scheduled for the day of purity. 2 barrels per breach point. The sewer bastards won't even smell it coming. Skritch grinned wide, his teeth like yellow daggers. The man-things thought themselves clever. But they did not understand the underworld they sought to burn. Skaven did not build like men. Their tunnels were unstable, knotted, honeycombed in such a way that the slightest breach could collapse entire chambers, or worse, expose deeper paths. And where one tunnel ended, another always lurked beneath. In their arrogance, the Empire planned to seal the infestations, bury the threat in stone and fire. They had no idea they were planting a spark into the very lungs of the rat's lair. Skritch did not fear the fire. He would ride it. The plan formed quickly, half instinct, half vengeance. First, he confirmed the powder locations. With Ulrich's help, he mapped the schedule, 3 guard shifts before the purity detonation. Each shift rotated the powder barrels to staging points, narrow culverts sealed behind rusted iron gates. One of those gates lay just beyond Skritch's tunnel breach, the one he dug through weeks ago with bleeding claws and filth-slicked teeth. It connected to a passage that looped up to the old alchemical waste chute. Abandoned now, but still structurally sound, and dry. He was dry enough for fire. Ulrich, sick with hunger and pale as bone, was slow to speak when Skritch presented the idea. You want to ignite the barrels before the detonation? Skritch nodded, his voice a gravel rasp. Yes, yes. Early boom-boom. Maska run, break their floor, flood the hall, sewers, eat them. We scurry. They'll see it coming, Ulrich muttered. They'll smell the smoke, react. No. Not if it is sabotage, not from inside. A rat cannot strike where man thinks he is God. Ulrich slumped against the wall. His skin was blotched with grime, his fingers shaking. But he smiled. You're insane. Yes, yes. On the final night, they acted. The bricks came away easier now, greased with months of slime and blood. Skritch squeezed through the tunnel first, his bones creaking like breaking twigs. Ulrich followed, groaning, his satchel strapped tight to his back. It held the last dregs of his bile flask and copper salts, the unstable mixture he had refined over weeks by swallowing iron flakes and vomiting them into a linen pouch. The powder room was unguarded. A miracle. No. Laziness. The man-things believed the purity of their cause enough to shield them from subversion. The powder barrels stood in rows, thick, resin-sealed casks marked with the hammer sigil of Sigmar. Skritch padded forward, claws clicking against the stone, ears twitching at every drop of water from above. Using his tongue, he selected the first barrel and traced his claw along the seam. Fresh resin. He licked it. Sharp, bitter, new. They planned to ignite this one last. He would light it first. Alric knelt beside him, trembling as he uncorked the vial. "No heat yet," he whispered. "It reacts on contact. Just pour." Skritch nodded. They soaked the base of 3 barrels. Thin lines of the reactive fluid curled like serpent trails across the floor, leading back toward the tunnel breach. There, Alric rigged the fuse, a length of ratgut cord dipped in lamp oil and wrapped in lint from their bedding. Primitive, perfect. The final step came with fire. Skritch held the torch, stolen from a careless guard during a shift change, and stared into the flame. "You sure?" Alric asked. "No turning," Skritch growled. "They burn, or we rot." He dropped the torch. The fire hissed as it met the soaked lint. Then it roared. The fluid ignited fast, too fast. Skritch grabbed Alric by the collar and yanked him bodily down the tunnel. The air behind them swelled, bloated with heat and pressure. The explosion tore through the tunnel like a divine scream. Stone ruptured, barrels shattered. A tidal wave of fire and dust and shrapnel screamed outward, devouring everything in its path. The force lifted Skritch off his feet, hurled him through the passage like a ragged missile. He hit the wall hard, teeth cracking, ribs snapping. Alric slammed into the muck beside him, vomiting blood and bile. The tunnel shook. Bricks collapsed behind them, burying the path. But they were through. Coughing, half-blind, Skritch crawled forward into the alchemical chute. Smoke filled his lungs. His eyes burned. But the wind from the breach howled upward, carrying fresh air with it. Freedom. Chaos. Above, in the dungeons, the guards screamed. Sirens blared. Sister Malthea's voice, shrill with fury, echoed down the stone corridors. "They've escaped. Skritch laughed as blood bubbled from his nose. He curled his claws around the broken stone and dragged himself forward, his tail a black streak behind him. The man-things had thought to bury the rats, but now their fortress burned, and Skritch-Needleclaw was gone. Chapter 8. Escape of the Vermin. The explosion was not a sound, it was a force, a god fist punching through the belly of the world. Stone split like rotten fruit, steel groaned, fire roared through corridors once thought impenetrable. The sanctified sigils etched into the black site's walls flared briefly as the shockwave passed, then flickered and died beneath a cascade of falling brick and bone. Guards screamed. Some were crushed outright, their skulls pulverized by dislodged masonry, their bodies turned into splattered pulp. Others burned, stumbling blind and shrieking as tongues of alchemical fire licked their flesh and set their very armor glowing, red-hot against their boiling skin. The lower cells, Skritch's prison, became a tomb. But Skritch-Needleclaw was not in his cell. He was a shadow in motion, a streak of filth and fury hurtling through smoke-choked ruin. Blood streamed down his brow, one eye blind from debris, his ribs ground together with every breath, each inhale laced with shards of agony. His body was failing, but it would last long enough. It had to. Alric stumbled behind him, coughing, dragging one foot behind him like dead meat. His face was half-charred, the left side blistered and slick with yellow pus. His fingers trembled around the flask that had not shattered during their flight. He wheezed with every step, the fire stealing air from his lungs. "Faster," Skritch snarled. "Climb Scary, now, now." The tunnel they entered through the alchemical chute was narrow, winding, and nearly lightless. Rats fled before them in squirming tides, stirred by the echoes of destruction. Pipes burst around them, showering them in steam and noxious chemical runoff. The tunnel groaned and shifted, stones dropping like molars from the jaws of a dying beast. Behind them, the dungeon collapsed in waves. Skretch reached the branching shaft first, a vertical tunnel lined with rotted planks and rusted pipework. It ascended sharply, leading to the forgotten flood drains that fed into the sewer systems far beneath Quinstadt. The only exit. He scrambled up, like a natural thing, his claws digging deep into the stone and iron, his body weaving through the wreckage. Behind him, Ulrich tried to follow. He slipped once, his foot catching on a broken rung. "Pull me," the alchemist cried, hand outstretched, his grip blood-slick. Skritch hesitated. He looked down, and he saw weakness. Human. Soft. Broken. Ulrich had been useful. Clever. But only until now. Skritch hissed. "No slow. Weak thing. Dead." Ulrich's eyes widened in horror. "Don't." Skritch kicked him. Hard. His clawed foot smashed into Ulrich's shoulder, breaking bone, loosening his grip. The man fell back into the tunnel shaft, crashing into a protruding pipe with a wet crunch. Skritch. His scream cut short as his head struck stone. His neck snapped sideways, bent at an unnatural angle. His body hung limp, caught on jagged iron like a broken puppet. Skritch didn't look back. He climbed. Up and up, lungs screaming, claws cracking. The heat from the explosion was still radiating through the tunnels, curling smoke and ash like a funeral shroud behind him. At last he emerged, heaving himself up through a broken grate into the belly of the city's sewer system. The stink of old rot and effluent was paradise. He collapsed, gasping, his body slick with blood, bile, and triumph. Far above, alarms rang through Grunstadt. The fortress above would be in chaos, half of it collapsed, the rest howling with panic. He lay still for a moment, listening to the madness above. Then he rose. Each step was pain, each breath a rasp. But Skritch-Needleclaw was alive. He'd escaped their dungeon, burned their stronghold, betrayed the only one who could tie him to the act. And now he'd vanished into the bowels of the world, just another shadow in the tunnels. One rat. One spark. One story whispered in the dark, and the Empire would never see him coming again. Chapter 9. Back to the Shadows. The journey back to the Under Empire was a crawl through hell. Skritch-Needleclaw limped, half dead, through fetid arteries of old stone and shattered pipe, the blood of men and rats drying in scabs upon his matted fur. One arm hung useless at his side, the joint twisted and cracked. His right leg dragged behind him, swollen with infection, leaving a trail of yellow-green pus and blood in the sewers that slurped hungrily around his path. Each breath was a gurgling rasp, laced with rot, but still he moved, driven by hatred, by survival, by the need. Downward, ever downward. The light of the surface was gone, replaced by bioluminescent moss, green and sickly, pulsing on the walls like an open wound. Here, in the veins of the world, the stink changed, from sour human rot to the acrid stench of warp fumes, decayed meat, and fungal gas. The very stone breathed with corruption. He was close. The Under Empire. The realm of vermin, and the stronghold of his kind. When Skritch staggered into the outer tunnels of the Clanviskrit dominion, the god-things nearly killed him. Halberds tipped with warpstone blades hissed inches from his throat as he collapsed before them. "I returned, yes, he wheezed. "Mission done, survived, endured. Much pain hurt, yes." The guards exchanged glances. One leaned in, sniffed him. "Smells like man-fire," the other muttered. "Burned but not man-thing. Still Skaven." They dragged him through the winding guts of the Beskrit warren. past walls lined with twitching meat cables and bone chimes, through tunnels riddled with rat skulls and rusting cogwheels half fused with living tissue. Finally, they threw him before the War Council dais, a half-circle of elevated stone where plague priests, warlock engineers, and clan warlords hissed in suspicion and disdain. In the center sat Greyfur Varlock, high overseer of the Viscrit espionage sect, his hunched body swathed in a robe that crawled with lice, and chanting lice priests. His beady eyes glared down at Skritch from under a rusted circlet of brass and bone. "Return, crawler," Varro croaked, his voice dry as shedding skin. "You live. Explain." Skritch dropped to his knees, shaking. Not with fear, but the tremors of controlled deceit. Yes, I return, not fail," he shouted hoarsely, bowing low. "Captured, tortured, bled, but endured. Hero smart. Mission survived." He slapped his chest, spat blood onto the floor, and continued, louder. "Empire thing caught me, locked hurt me in black vault. They used knives, fire prayer, tried to break Skritch, yes, but I bit clawed, did not speak truth, spoke lies, confusion, spoke of dead tunnels, broken nests." Murmurs buzzed around the dais like gnats around a corpse. Bark narrowed his eyes. "And Mapsilin? Was it taken?" Skritch bowed deeper. Yes, but false. I swapped maps before missions jet. They saw wrong lines, trap paths. They think burrow leads to power feign. It leads to gas vents, exploded, burned them. More murmurs. Some hissed approval. Others squinted with doubt. "And your escape," Varric growled. "You return alone. Alone. What of your contact? Human? Alchemist? Ally?" Skritch tensed. Just enough. "Dead," he spat. "Betrayed me. Tried to sell me to the man-things for freedom. I saw. Killed him myself. Crushed skull, left him to fire." Varric was silent. Then he leaned forward, long fingers interlaced like a predator about to pounce. "You lie well, Skritch-Needleclaw." Skritch's heart spasmed. "But perhaps truth enough lies inside. You returned. You bring chaos. You bring fire." A chorus of approving squeals rose from the council. One of the warlocks cackled and slammed his staff on the stone. A plague priest gnawed a talisman and nodded in slow, twitching agreement. "Rewarded you shall be," Valik declared. "Given claws. Command. Not above me, no, but near. Useful, yes. Useful and sly." Skritch bowed lower, mouth a rictus of triumph. Yes, I serve. I kill. I destroy for glory clan." But inside, under the crust of subservience, he was seething. He had more than they knew. Memories, layouts, scent maps, locations of black sites, names of Empire interrogators, and the true scale of the surface's paranoia. The man-things feared. He had power, and soon Skritch-Needleclaw would not just serve a clan. He would build one. On lies, on blood, on betrayal. From the shadows. Chapter 10. The scheme continues. The chamber pulsed with a sickly green glow, its walls slick with warp fume condensation and runnels of glowing filth. Deep beneath the bowels of the Under-Empire, in the sanctum known as the Burrow Deep, Skritch-Needleclaw knelt before the Council of Claws, a semicircle of shadowed Skaven warlords, plague seers, and twitching warlock engineers, who watched him like vultures around a bloated carcass. Above them all, suspended in a lattice of cables, tubes, and bone scaffolding, was Greyfur Vark, High Overseer and Master of the Viscrit espionage web. His fur was sparse and leprous, his face partially hidden beneath a steel and leather respirator that hissed with every breath. His left eye had been replaced with a polished orb of emerald warglass, glowing faintly as it focused on Skritch with mechanical precision. "You return, alive, survive," Varlik rasped. "You lie well, twist well, Empire bled, you live. Good, yes, yes." Skritch's head remained bowed, but his ears twitched with restrained calculation. His mind, sharper now, no longer ran like a hunted beast but slithered like a dagger through velvet. No longer the desperate spy clawing for scraps. Now he saw angles, vulnerabilities, ambitions gleam in shadowed eyes. "I live to serve, Claw," he hissed, with proper reverence. "But not too much. Submission, yes. Obedience, never." From the warped dais, Varlik gestured. Another Skaven stepped forward, bearing a scroll wrapped in flayed human skin, sealed with a shard of black warpstone. The courier's limbs were mechanical, clacking spider legs of brass and bone. He unrolled the scroll with insectile grace. "A new task," Varlik declared. "A dangerous mission. Suicide death for most. But not you." The scrawl's ink glowed faintly as the orders became clear. "Ben Grunstadt, again. But not to spy, not to sneak. To poison. To rupture. Yeah. The Empire rebuilds." Ark spat. "Their walls rise. They think themselves strong. But they use new machines. Man-things steal Skaven secrets. Sigmar worship, filth. Make cog chariots and echo steel towers. Your mission: infiltrate, corrupt, collapse." Another voice hissed from the shadows, old, wet, and wheezing, a plague priest of Clan Pestilence. His eyes were swollen with disease, the sockets leaking yellow pus. "We give gift. Yes," he crooned, slinging a bundle toward Skritch's feet. "Blessed filth. Fever matter. Gas that screams. Release this in their foundries and the Mandings will boil in their armor." Skritch opened the bundle carefully. Inside were 4 vials, stoppered with bone plugs. The glass pulsed. One trembled when he touched it. Living plagues, diseased hatred given form. It was perfect. He bowed once more, reverent, but in his gut the fire burned hotter than ever. Grunstadt, the place of his torment, the black site that once held him, the city that dared to cage a child of the horned rat. He would return, but not as a scout, not as a slave. He would come as death. That night, in his private warren, a chamber of hanging bone charms, rusted tools, and stolen Empire maps, Skritch traced his claw across the parchment. Grunstadt, again, he saw it all. The places of weakness, the drainage tunnels they still hadn't collapsed, the soldier barracks rebuilt atop cracked foundations, the sewers where the explosion had ruptured the power conduits that lit their torch lanterns. Everything he had let them see during his captivity was leading here. The vials glowed behind him, casting mad shadows on the wall. He turned to them, whispering, "You will speak for me. You will scream, kill, boil flesh. Yes, yes." He curled his tail, breathing in the fetid air of his lair. His broken ribs itched. The scarred brand from Malthea's interrogation throbbed faintly, his souvenir from her. He would return it soon, with interest. His claws clicked on the stone as he stood. Skritch-Needleclaw had endured fire, chains, betrayal. Now he would deliver plague and ruin. He would walk beneath their city with plague in his breath and knives behind every grin. He would collapse towers, shatter their machines, feed the Warriors of Skaven kind with man-flesh and weeping. And when they screamed and begged for the light of Sigmar, he would be the shadow that answered. Not just a spy, not just a survivor, Soon, a name spoken in dread by both man and rat alike. The scheme continued, and it had only just begun.